Welcome to the Matt Bernier Show.
Live from the Daily Racing Form studios here in Midtown Manhattan on Friday, April the 1st. It's the Matt Bernier Show here on DRF Live. I'm Matt Bernier. Happy April Fool's Day. I'm going to get this, out of the way just to start off with. If you see anything on Twitter today or on social media, double check it, triple check it, quadruple check it before you go and run with it, because people are going to be stupid and try and throw stuff out there that probably shouldn't be out there. But just anyway, have a happy April Fool's Day. We've got a good show on deck today, I think. First things first, we'll talk about the big sort of clash of the three-year-olds. The showdown between Nyquist and Mohaymen is going to happen tomorrow afternoon at Gulfstream Park in the Florida Derby. We'll give you some headlines, DRF Plus headlines that you can find right below us. We'll talk to Gabby Gaudet, Gulfstream racing analyst down there, see what she had to think. Talked to her yesterday. It was taped. We'll throw to that in a little bit. We'll dive into a little bit of handicapping, go over some of the races, and go back and see what happened last weekend in some of those big spots. But let's start at the top with the big main event tomorrow afternoon. The Florida Derby, 100 points go to the Derby winner. We get it. 50 to the runner-up. This race comes down to Mohaymen, and this race comes down to Nyquist. I know it's a 10-horse field, and I hate to just call it filler or call everyone else an also-ran, but there's going to need to be something ridiculous to happen for one of those horses not to win the race, either Nyquist or Mohaymen. Let's start off at the top with Mohaymen. Mohaymen is undefeated. He's currently your Kentucky Derby favorite as far as future books are concerned. I know at the win, he is the first choice. He's 9-2, I believe, last check I saw. He has over $800,000 in earnings. He looks the part. He fits the bill. Would it be stunning at all if a horse like this went out there tomorrow and did what he was supposed to do and got the job done? No. I think people have looked at him for a long time and said, as far as the three-year-olds are concerned, from the very beginning of the year on, he has done everything the way that you want to see a Kentucky Derby contender do it. He's professional. He's run fast races. I'd like to see him move up. We'll talk about that momentarily. But he just looks the part. Now, I know maybe you want to take everything at Gulfstream a little bit of a grain of salt recently, simply because we've seen so many horses go from Gulfstream Park to Churchill Downs and bomb. We've seen some of them work out pretty well. We saw Orb a couple years ago win the Kentucky Derby. But as far as Mohaymen is concerned, he has the connections. He has everything we're looking for. Maybe he's the one that can get Kieran McLaughlin his first Kentucky Derby victory. I feel like Kieran's kind of the last of that sort of big group. Shug got his a couple years back. Baffert already has his. Pletcher has his. You go down the list. Maybe it's him and Chad Brown are the two big names that are looking for their first Kentucky Derby. But I guess I would give a little bit more credence to Kieran at this point, because it seems like he's got many more dirt accomplishments under his belt. Chad's still very early on as far as the dirt is concerned. But Mohaymen checks all the boxes. He looks the part. He does what he's supposed to do. Nyquist, he does all the same things as well. I mean, this is the champion 2-year-old last year. He won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He's unbeaten from 6 starts. He has nearly $2 million in earnings. What else is there to say? He's currently the third choice as far as the future book is concerned out there at the Wynn Las Vegas. And again, we're talking about a horse who hasn't done anything wrong on the racetrack, and spare me the crap about him being disrespected. He's not disrespected. You can't be crowned champion 2-year-old. You got to get more votes than everyone else. And guess who ran second in that voting? Mohaymen. This horse is unbeaten. He's run faster than Mohaymen as at this point. You got that one-on-one buyer in the San Vicente. What else do you want to know? He's not disrespected. He's properly respected. He's one of the top 2 or 3 choices for the Kentucky Derby. Tomorrow's going to go a long way into deciding, I think, who ultimately will be the favorite the first Saturday in May. I don't know that that means that that's the horse that you want to be betting on or the most likely winner of the Kentucky Derby, but we'll get to that point when we get to it. But ultimately, what does tomorrow really mean? Let's just say Nyquist goes out there and does his thing. What's it really mean? Nyquist is shipping into South Florida for, I think, one reason and one reason only, and it has nothing to do with the Derby prep. It has everything to do with the $1 million bonus that Fasig-Tipton has offered up to any of their 2-year-olds in training sale that happened last year. Anyone that went through the sales auction and came back to win the Florida Derby as a 3-year-old, they'd get an extra $1 million on top of it. Now, when you put it all together, Nyquist is essentially running for pretty darn close to what his earnings already are. He's earned $1.7 million, I think, all told, and maybe the number's a little bit off, but if he were to win this race tomorrow, he would earn a payday of about $1.5 million. So he'd almost double up in earnings. I can understand why the connections have said, you know what, Santa Anita Derby, I know that's in our backyard. We want to go down to Florida. And even though the Derby favorite, Mohaymen, is there, we're not that concerned because we know we've got a good horse in our own right. I think it's still a prep, but I think you would be very, very naive not to think that you're going to see probably the best race this horse is capable of running. Now, projecting forward 4 or 5 weeks from now, does that mean that he's going to win the Kentucky Derby? No, because I think there's a lot of questions about him going 10 furlongs, his running style, if there's other pace in there. I know he's sat off, but he's going to need to run that one-on-one buyer that he got in San Vicente, going 2 turns for the first time. And again, let's just call it for what it is. At this point in his career, he has not run fast going 2 turns. He's won multiple times going a mile and 16th. He's going to need to go a mile and an eighth tomorrow. The mile and an eighth isn't a concern for me, but he's going to need to run that one-on-one buyer that he got in the San Vicente and translate that to 2 turns. Mo Heyman, on the other hand, I'm a little bit concerned, not concerned, but I'm intrigued to see just how tight this horse is. And it may sound a little bit foolish because it is. It's a grade 1, and you can make hay. You can turn this into a stallion, a proper stallion with a grade 1 win under his belt. But kind of what I was alluding to before, I think this is really the horse that Kieran McLaughlin looks at and says, this is my Derby winner. This is my Derby horse. And I don't think you're going to see him 100% tied down tomorrow. I just don't. I think you're going to see him probably 90, 95%. Now, what does that translate into a buyer? I have no idea. 3 points, 2 points, you have no idea. But I think this is a horse that is he's going to run a good race tomorrow. Don't get me wrong. But I just think if push comes to shove, who is absolutely trying to win that race 100%? There's no question about who, what the intentions are. It's Nyquist. Mo Heyman, they're trying to win the race. We all know that. But you wonder if this is just strictly going to be used as that final prep for the best peak performance the first Saturday in May. I guess the big question ultimately, too, coming down the road is if they run here tomorrow, they're also going to run, hopefully, knock on wood, in the first Saturday in May in the Kentucky Derby. And we'd have another showdown. And maybe that translates into a new rivalry, a budding rivalry here as far as our horses are concerned. You've got all the major sports. You've got the Red Sox, Yankees. You've got Carolina, Duke. You name it. Go on and on and on. Real Madrid, Barcelona, whatever it may be. But from a racing standpoint, let's start with the granddaddy of them all, Secretariat and Sham. This is Secretariat and Belmont.
By ahead, Sham is on the outside. They've opened 10 lengths on My Gallant, who is third by ahead, with Twice a Prince fourth. Then it's another 8 lengths back to Private Smiles, who is trailing the field. They continue down the backstretch, and he's into the stretch. Secretariat leads his field by 18 lengths, and now Twice a Prince is taken second, and My Gallant is moved down to third. They're in the stretch. Secretariat has opened a 22-length lead. He is going to be the Triple Crown winner. Here comes Secretariat to the wire. An unbelievable, an amazing performance. He hits the finish.
I'm not saying they're going to be Secretariat and Sham, but we saw throughout that Triple Crown season that Sham just happened to be born at the wrong time because Secretariat ended up being one of the all-time greats, if not the greatest of all time. It'll be interesting to see how tomorrow plays out and going forward. Another, maybe this one's a little bit more reasonable. How about Affirmed and Aladar, the stretch of the 78 Belmont?
It is still affirmed as they come to the quarter pole. He's holding on to a head lead. Alidar is outside of him and challenging that lead. The two are heads apart, and Alidar's got a lead. Alidar put ahead in front, right in the middle of the stretch. It's Alidar and Affirmed battling back along the inside. We'll test these two to the wire. Affirmed under a left-hand whip. Alidar on the outside driving. Affirmed and Alidar heads apart. Affirmed's got a nose in front as they come onto the wire. At the finish, it's going to be dead tight. Affirmed.
We're getting a little bit more timely here. Let's go back to 89. We'll take a look at Sunday Silence and Easy Go, or the stretch run of the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Silence, a threatening presence on the outside. Easy Goer is set down and he's put to a fierce drive. Coming to the final furlong. Sunday Silence surges to the front. Blushing John trying to fight back. Easy Goer with one final acceleration, and Sunday Silence holds on, and he wins by a desperate neck.
Now, I was 3 months old when that happened, so I don't really remember it. And I don't remember those other two that we saw. But one that is much more timely, and one of the reasons, one of the rivalries that really got my juices pumping and got me really deep into this game was Blind Luck and Havre de Grace. And let's take a look at the stretch run of the 2010 Alabama up at Saratoga.
Devil May Care across the track with Blind Luck trying to catch him from the far outside. Top of the stretch, acting happy, a stubborn foe. Havre de Grace is there. Blind Luck is gaining on them with every stride. Down to the final 16th. Blind Luck, Havre de Grace, Havre de Grace. Blind Luck, Havre de Grace. Blind Luck wins the Alabama in a thriller.
Just another great call from Durkin. But I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe tomorrow is the beginning of a budding rivalry between Mo Heyman and Nyquist. I'm not going to put him on that, or either one of those horses on that sort of pedestal of those 4 rivalries that we just took a look at. But hopefully tomorrow we get a good race. And hopefully going on from there, we get another good showdown from the 2 of them in the Kentucky Derby. And then maybe 2 weeks later, we get a showdown from the 2 of them in the Preakness. And who knows, maybe throughout the rest of the 3-year-old season for those 2. It'll be exciting to see the main event tomorrow at Gulfstream Park. It's the Florida Derby between the 2 unbeatens. We'll take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll dive into some DRF Plus headlines. And we'll lead you on in to an interview I did yesterday with Gabby Gaudet. Talk to you soon.
Saturday, April 2nd, Gulfstream Park. It's an East versus West battle for supremacy at the ExpressBet.com Florida Derby. The top 2 Triple Crown contenders, Heyman and Nyquist, face off at America's #1 thoroughbred track.
Mo Heyman to the front and remains unbeaten.
Nyquist in fine fashion takes the San Vicente.
Saturday, April 2nd, the ExpressBet.com Florida Derby. First race, 12 p.m. Welcome to your playground, Gulfstream Park.
Say goodbye to your inner caveman. If you're making caveman bets on pick sixes, you could be leaving money on the table. DRF Bets Ticketmaker helps you build more profitable exotic bets and place them with one click. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticketmaker. Be a samurai with your ROI. DRF Bets Ticketmaker helps you cut out unprofitable exotic bets before they happen and be the master of profits. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticketmaker, the exotic wagering app.
Back here, 12:11 on the East Coast, 9:11 on the West Coast, the Matt Bernier Show here on DRF Live. If you're watching live simulcast, DRF Live, ESPN.com. If you go back and watch the podcast, it's on YouTube, DRF.com, and SoundCloud. Let's dive into some DRF Plus headlines, clearly brought to you by DRF Plus, and they've got all sorts of good subscriptions. You'll see we'll throw that banner up at the bottom at the screen. Let's start off with the most recent one that we have. Mary Rampolini. She talked about sudden breaking news. He worked for his run in the Arkansas Derby in a couple weeks, got a half mile in 48-4. The way that the clockers looked at it, the final quarter, 23-2, galloped out 5/8, a minute and 4/5, 3/4 of a mile in 1:15-2. Sudden breaking news, we talked about it a little bit, and his name, spoiler alert, it's going to pop up in a new, fresh Derby top 5 here that we'll do a little bit later on in the show. This is a horse that, he was very unlucky, I think. He got stopped a little bit on the far turn, similar to what we've seen recently with Motom. He had a head of steam. He finished well. I think it's a scenario where he's just got to get clear run. And you're always going to be at the mercy of pace and trip with these one-run closers, unfortunately, if you back him. I think he's got a ton of ability. I think if you draw a line through him or Motom, I think you're making a huge mistake. I think they're both very good horses, top-quality 3-year-olds. It'll be interesting to see if he gets a cleaner trip in the Arkansas Derby. Sudden breaking news, one to watch. Mary Rampolini also talking about a terrible story. Tornado does limited damage at Will Rogers Downs the other night. Track official John Lees, who you've seen him, he's been an announcer at Kentucky Downs. He does some of the paddock prattle at Del Mar, and he's a track official at Will Rogers. He confirmed damage is under 2 barns, but thankfully it was a bit of a blessing, a bit of a surprise, really. That it sounds like it was essentially a direct hit on the town and the surrounding areas, but there was only damage under those 2 barns. Could have been significantly worse. Thankful that everyone down there is happy and healthy and sound, and hopefully damage isn't too bad. Mary Rampolini again, number 3 times for Mary already. Synchrony is under consideration for the Grade 3 Lexington up at Keeneland here in a couple weeks. Worked Tuesday at Oakland 5/8 in a minute 1 3/5. A horse who going into the Rebel, not the Rebel, the race prior to that, I believe that would either be the Smarty Jones or someone else can help me out with that. This is a horse that I think most people were going to be keying in on. And they said, you know what, he's the one of the entry, and basically the people got bailed out because he wasn't the one that got the job done. It was sudden breaking news. Synchrony is under consideration for the Lexington. I think maybe the Derby talk is probably kind of put off a little bit for this one. You can get 10 points in the Lexington for the win, but I think ultimately that's just going to be kind of a bridge to maybe a different race, whether it's a race like the Preakness, whether it's the Belmont, whether it's something else over the summer. But looks like Synchrony is going to be under consideration. Nothing guaranteed, but under consideration for the Grade 3 Lexington at Keeneland. Mike Welsh down in South Florida filed a report here just below us. Mubtahij, he will join Kieran McLaughlin's barn throughout the Breeders' Cup. Mubtahij, we saw him run in the Belmont Stakes, the Kentucky Derby last year. Most recently, he was runner-up to California Chrome in the Dubai World Cup last week. He's going to probably follow a similar campaign to Frosted. And then once it's all said and done, he'll be sent back to Mike DeCock leading into the Dubai Carnival for next year. So it sounds like we're going to have Mubtahij here for the majority of these races. And if I'm just going to guess, if he's following a similar campaign to that of Frosted, You're thinking maybe the Whitney, maybe the Woodward, both of those up at Saratoga. You go to the Jockey Club Gold Cup, and it all culminates at Santa Anita in the Breeders' Cup Classic. I think he's a very nice horse. I've always been a bit of a fan of his. I can understand why some people want to look at it and say, yeah, you know what, he's not that good. He doesn't change leads. I have a sneaky suspicion. It's like anything else. Whether you're a golfer, you play baseball, basketball, whatever it is, muscle memory, the horses have it too. You wonder if maybe he's just in that sort of rut where, you know, he can do everything perfectly throughout the day in training and whatnot, but the minute you get into a race, you just go back to what you know, and he doesn't change leads. I'd like to think Kieran may be able to tweak that a little bit and have him ready to go, because if he can do it all and he can build on it, I think he could be an interesting player down the road. I don't know if he's good enough to win a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic. He was humbled by California Chrome, but I think he's a very nice horse. Dave Grenning up here in New York filed a report about Willet, the hard-hitting 8-year-old New York bred. She has been retired, daughter of Jumpstart. She won 10 of 31 lifetime and earned over $865,000. Boy, she's got a fun date ahead of her. It's either going to be with American Pharoah or with Candy Ride. It'll be interesting to see what she ends up producing. She herself was a nice New York bred, late-running sprinter, and she many stakes out of those 10 victories. So Willet has been retired. And the final story that we'll talk about before we cut for a little bit of a break, Mike Welsh, again, down in South Florida, XY Jet, who ran such a game race over there in Dubai Golden Shaheen at Meydan. He, unfortunately, he's going to be sidelined indefinitely with a left knee chip. Same area as a major injury that he had last year that kind of took him off. He was never really truly on the Derby trail, but it took him off the trail. He was sidelined for a while. And maybe that has something to do with him being goofy with his lead changes. He's got a bit of a knee chip. It doesn't sound like it's anything major, but he's going to be out for a little while. The most interesting thing for me is it's apparently unclear whether or not he'll return to Jorge Navarro's barn in South Florida, or he'll go straight out to Southern California and be under the tutelage and care of Peter Miller. It would make sense, though, if the long-term goal is the Breeders' Cup Sprint, because obviously Miller is campaigned and headquartered down there in Southern California. He trains his horses at San Luis Rey. And at the end of the day, this horse is also owned by Rockingham Ranch, and I believe their main trainer that they use is Peter Miller. So it'll be interesting to see XY Jet. He's going to be gone for a little bit. When he comes back, you've got to view him as a major player for the Breeders' Cup Sprint if he comes back as the same XY Jet that we have seen here early in this year. Again, DRF Plus, we've got all sorts of good packages and deals and whatnot. You can take a look at that, drf.com/plus. We're going to take a quick commercial break right now. When we come back, you're going to take a look at an interview I did yesterday with Gulfstream Racing analyst Gabby Gaudet. We're going to dive into the showdown between Mo Heyman and Nyquist, talk a little bit more about the rest of the races down at Gulfstream tomorrow. Fun day of racing. Gabby Gaudet coming up next on the Matt Bernier Show. Stay with us.
Here's Machono! They're off in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Private Zone has run a 45 flat half mile and has opened up 2.5 lengths. Private Zone's got the lead close to home, and he's all by himself. Private Zone wins the Forgo.
Saturday, April 2nd, Gulfstream Park. It's an East versus West battle for supremacy at the ExpressBet.com Florida Derby. The top two Triple Crown contenders, Heyman and Nyquist, face off at America's #1 thoroughbred track.
Mo Heyman to the front and remains unbeaten.
Nyquist in fine fashion takes the San Vicente.
Saturday, April 2nd, the ExpressBet.com Florida Derby. First race, 12 p.m. Welcome to your playground, Gulfstream Park.
Back here on the Matt Bernier Show, it's time to take a look at the big day of racing at Gulfstream Park on Saturday afternoon. It's highlighted by the clash of the Titans, the clash of the 3-year-olds, the clash of the superpowers, however you want to call it. It is what it is. It's Nyquist, it's Mo Heyman. They're both undefeated. They'll be going head-to-head in the Florida Derby. Let's bring in Gulfstream racing analyst Gabby Gaudet to help us out and talk a little bit about this race. Gabby, it's Matt in New York. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Matt. How are you?
Not bad, no complaints. We're getting ready for really ramping up the whole Derby sort of 3-year-old picture as far as these prep races are concerned. We've got 10 that are going to go in this Florida Derby, but the story really revolves around 2 horses in particular. We've talked about them a little bit, but let's start with the local hope, that being Mo Heyman. He's the current Kentucky Derby favorite. He's unbeaten. From your standpoint, have you seen him recently? If you have, does he look good? Is there anything that we should be aware of? And overall, are the connections, do they seem pleased?
They do, Matt. I actually went up to Palmettos on Monday morning, and I spent a little while with Kieran. He just got off of a red eye, or whatever you want to call it, from Dubai, and he was a little bit jet-lagged, but I was around the barn, and Mo Heyman was just kind of walking in the shed row. I got the chance to talk to Kieran and kind of see Mo Heyman, too. And it's funny because if you look at pictures at him, or even if you see him on camera in the afternoon, he looks like a very well he is, but he's also very small, and I think that kind of shows how agile he is in the afternoon. And I said this a couple of times too. He just has such a good mind, and you can see that in the mornings and even in the afternoons before the Grade 2 Fountain of Youth. Last out, we saw Zulu kind of acting up behind the gate. We saw Fellowship acting up behind the gate. And Mo Heyman was just taking in all of his surroundings. So those are 2 huge positives that I think he has. And he also has home court advantage. He's been going 2 turns locally, whereas his main contender, Nyquist, has to now stretch out to 2 turns and ship across country.
Does the buyer speed figure for Mo Heyman concern you at all? It's something that is at least stuck in the back of my mind, that he earned a 95 buyer in his final start as a 2-year-old. In his 2 races thus far at Gulfstream, he's paired up 95s. He's yet to really move forward. Is that any concern to you?
It's a slight concern, I will say that. But if you look at his races, it looks like he might have more ability to move forward. And I think that's kind of, speaking to Kieran on Monday, too, they're really confident going into the race. So it almost makes you think, okay, they're giving him maintenance workouts between the Holy Bull, the Fountain of Youth, and now the Florida Derby. They're just keeping him at bay. He does what he has to do in the afternoon, and I think if he's really tried and tested, we're going to see him run a big race. So he's one that I think, even though the lower buyer speed figures in the Holy Bull and the Fountain of Youth, he's capable of running bigger numbers and faster races.
You had alluded to his main competition. That's going to be the number 4 Nyquist for Doug O'Neill. He'll ship into South Florida. He's actually already there. He's the undefeated 2-year-old champion. He won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year at Keeneland, so we know shipping isn't going to be much of an issue for this horse. Ultimately, it comes down to, do you think he's as good as Mo Heyman? And very similar to the first question I asked about Mo Heyman, have you seen him yet coming off the plane or anything like that? And overall, have you talked to any of the connections, or have you gotten any vibes from them?
He does. He has a great coat. You see him in the mornings, and he looks like a very healthy horse, and he shipped in. I know there was a kind of change of plans in shipping him here to South Florida. He was initially supposed to come in on Monday. He wound up coming in on Tuesday evening. They went out to the track with him on Wednesday morning and this morning as well. And on Wednesday morning, he was really hot. I will say that when he was training, he was a little bit washed out and kind of on the nervous side, but today it looked like he took a huge leap forward in terms of how he was behaving at training this morning. So that's definitely a positive. But you were mentioning that he has experience shipping, but he was shipping from Santa Anita to kind of colder weather at Keeneland and the Breeders' Cup, back to Santa Anita, and I don't know if he's ever faced really had to experience the humidity and the weather that we have in South Florida now approaching the springtime. So that's something that you have to pay attention to, but he's another one that is kind of on the leaner side, smaller side, and he's very agile, and his running style is his main attribute too, because he's tactical.
And you bring up a good point with that sort of humidity issue. We've seen so many times horses up at Saratoga that just fall apart. They melt in the paddock, they melt in the post parade because They're not used to dealing with such humidity. You're going to be dealing with that, or he will anyway. You guys have been dealing with that all throughout the course of the meeting down there at Gulfstream, and you mentioned he'll be dealing with that for the first time. We're joined by Gulfstream racing analyst Gabby Gaudet here at the Matt Bernier Show. For the rest of the field, it's a 10-horse field. You've got the two main players. The rest of them, I don't want to call them filler, but is there anyone in particular of the other 8 that we should be aware of or should be looking at?
Well, you and I both know that whoever, if Mo Heyman or Nyquist are going to go down, it's going to be a huge upset because several of these horses are going to have to take a huge step forward, a couple of steps forward. There's been some talk surrounding the 7, Take It to the Edge, who recently broke his maiden. He was one of the more impressive debut performances that we've seen so far in South Florida for Dale Romans. But he, and they're high on this horse. They think he has a lot of talent, and rightly so. Anytime you draw away from a field by almost 8 lengths, is always impressive, especially at 7 furlongs at first asking. But it's going to be tough now that he has speed. He might get pressured from other horses on the lead, a situation he's never been in, and he has to stretch his speed out to 2 turns. Beyond that, Matt, maybe the 8, Fashionable Freddie, he's going to have to take leaps and bounds forward from a buyer speed figure perspective to even come close. But he did get into some serious trouble against Azar and Kelly Tuff last time out, a pretty decent allowance race that we saw. And I think the best, they've teetered back and forth, going to the lead with him, taking him back off the pace. And I think the best scenario for him would be to rate on Saturday, given the overabundance of speed.
Florida Derby, race 14, Saturday afternoon, scheduled post time right around 10:07 East Coast. I'm going to put it to you, one or the other, Mo Heyman or Nyquist, where are you going?
Mo Heyman. I'm staying local.
Staying with the local horse, Mo Heyman. Very good. I like that. As far as the rest of the card is concerned, let's not just focus on this. Is there any one horse or one race in particular on I mentioned it, 14 races are going to be going on Saturday afternoon. Great racing top to bottom. Is there any one horse or one race that you're really intrigued with?
I really like the Appleton, the Grade 3 Appleton going the mile. I think it's just an interesting race for several different purposes. We have All Included, who for Todd Pletcher, who's now cutting back to the mile, who it's actually kind of an interesting move. He draws the rail, the blinkers come on the cutback in distance. We have Divisadero, who coming back, making his seasonal debut last time out against Great Druid Company behind Heart to Heart, was just floating like a freight train, and I was visually very impressed by him. And I'm looking forward to seeing him come back out on Saturday. And then we have a Grade 1 winner in the Belmont Derby, Force the Pass, coming in off of a layoff. And I actually saw him up at Palm Meadows on Monday as well. And speaking to the assistant, he said, they freshened him up in Colts Neck, a farm that Alan Goldberg owns in New Jersey, and they think he's going to show a lot of speed coming off the layoff. So there's a lot of different things going on. We even had Sky Captain sitting on a big race at Tampa last time out. So I thought that was one of the more interesting races in of the day.
Yeah, the Appleton really is an interesting one. You mentioned the pace scenario will be interesting. It's only 8 horses, but it's 8 quality horses. It's very similar to the mare race that there was going on earlier on in the day. You've got that going to be a 2-turn race on the turf. You've obviously got the Gulfstream Oaks. That'll be a good thing. But full day of racing at Gulfstream Park, 14 scheduled, and the main event very clearly is the Grade 1 Florida Derby. Now, our friend Dan Torgman, I had him on last week, and he was the first guest. You're the second guest here for this show. And we kind of wrapped up last week, and we're going to do it again with you, very similarly to that same sort of scenario, where it's going to be calling it the gallop out, if you will, because this is the final. The race is over, the interview's over, but something fun to just kind of get you out of here. 5 rapid-fire questions. Are you ready?
I don't know if I'm ready, but go ahead.
The first one, route or sprint?
Route.
Route, okay. Number 2, dirt or turf?
Turf.
Turf. Number 3, chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Chocolate. Number 4 is kind of a 2-part question. Spring, summer, fall, or winter in Florida?
Winter in Florida.
Winter in Florida. Spring, summer, fall, winter in Maryland?
Fall in Maryland.
Fall in Maryland. And the final question, which everyone will get asked, Dan got very uncomfortable when I proposed it to him. Rachel Alexandra Zenyatta.
Oh. I'm going to have to go with Zenyatta.
Wow, I did not expect that. So we have one Rachel and we have one Zenyatta. Gabby Gaudet, Gulfstream Park Racing Analyst. Thank you for the time. Great analysis. And best of luck this Saturday. Really the final big day of racing at Gulfstream Park for the championship meeting. You guys have done terrific work down there. All meet. Best of luck, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. I have all my bags packed, ready to head back to Maryland on Monday. So it's going to be a great weekend and a great way to cap it all off.
Thanks for a couple minutes, Gabby.
Saturday, April 2nd, Gulfstream Park. It's an East versus West battle for supremacy at the ExpressBet.com Florida Derby. The top two Triple Crown contenders, Mahayman and Nyquist, face off at America's #1 thoroughbred track.
Mohayman to the front and remains unbeaten.
Nyquist in fine fashion takes the San Vicente.
Saturday, April 2nd, the ExpressBet.com Florida Derby. First race, 12 p.m. Welcome to your playground, Gulfstream Park.
12:31 on the East Coast, 9:31 on the West Coast, the Matt Bernier Show on DRF Live. I want to thank Gulfstream analyst Gabby Gaudet one more time for coming on, doing this taped interview yesterday. I'm sure it's just chaos there today and tomorrow for them, so tried to get her in a little bit early, got through that. And interesting, I really think that's something that we may want to keep an eye on. Nyquist hasn't dealt with that just gross humidity. Anyone that lives on the East Coast knows, especially if you've been to Saratoga. There's a reason that Saratoga in South Florida, there's a permanent sort of 20% chance of a thunderstorm because it can just be just oppressive and gross. Even the Jersey Shore, Monmouth Park has had that numerous times where it's just miserable. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles that. Mohayman's at least been stable there. He kind of knows what the surroundings are all about. Let's dive into some Derby talk, kind of piggybacking on what we just talked about with Gabby. Let's take a look at the updated top 20 leaderboard as far as the points are concerned. And it'll be interesting to see how things shake down. Look, tomorrow, we get it. You're going to have Mohayman. You're going to have Nyquist. They're going to get more points, whatever. It is what it is. The most fascinating thing for me now, as far as the change is concerned on this leaderboard, the top 10, draw a line through Polar River. She's not coming over. Number 2, Lonnie, Mikio Matsunaga. This is a horse that is Kentucky-bred, Japanese-based, and he just won the UAE Derby last week at Meydan. Sounds like they're coming. And that means it's unfortunate or bad news for some of the horses that are either on the bubble or toward the bottom of the list. Now, look, you get to move up a spot because you take out that number 10. But you look at some of these other ones, again, Sunny Ringe, it sounds like the connections are pretty content on saying we're going to punt on that. Forever Mo, based on his most recent start, I don't know what they're looking at there. Laoban's still a maiden, but I'd be stunned if Eric Guillot didn't go on. Dazzling Gem, as much as I love him, he's going to need to do more or show more in his final prep, whether it's the Lexington, the Northern Spur, or the Arkansas Derby, whatever it is. And we're going to see Zulu and Outwork, whether one of them goes up to New York to run here at Aqueduct in the Wood. The other one, I'm sure, will run at Keeneland in the Bluegrass. Maybe one will run in Arkansas. You never know. Pletcher's got just a small army of horses going out. Before we put up the list, Mike, before we put up the top 5, let's run them through top to bottom, 1 through 5, because there's a new number 1 for me. I teased it a little bit last week. I didn't give you a new one last week simply because we had Dan on. We were talking about everything. And just we wanted to wait and see how the whole thing in Louisiana shook down. Number 1 for me, let's take a look at the stretch run of the Rebel Stakes. Pete Aiello with the call, Cupid.
Sudden breaking news has got an awful lot to do with less than a quarter of a mile to go. They went 3/4 and 112 flat. Cupid trying to seal the deal, but here's Whitmore down the outside for Ortiz Jr. Gray Sky back third. It's Cupid or Whitmore to the wire. Cupid on the inside. Whitmore trying to get past on the outside, but Cupid has something in reserve, and Cupid wins the Rebel. Whitmore was second in front of Creator, who flew home to be third.
I'm sure some people are going to look at that and say, you're an idiot. You're falling for the other Baffert. You know, we went through this last year where you had Dortmund, you had American Pharaoh. Well, guess what? Maybe his A string this year is More Spirit. That horse, considering everything he did for the first time, and he passed it all with flying colors, that was a huge effort. I don't care what anyone says. He's a little bit goofy, and maybe that's going to be the downfall of Cupid. But that performance alone was enough for me to put him at the top of the leaderboard because he's got speed. I think he can run all day. He rebroke at the end of that. I know some people want to say maybe Whitmore hung. I don't think he did. I just think Cupid's a good horse, and I think he's finally starting to put it all together. And I feel like even more of an idiot because way back on DRF Live on a Saturday, Dan Illman and I were going back and forth, and I said, I for some reason brought up Cupid, and I said, bit of a plug, not very good. Well, that was when he was going one turn. Now, ever since he's gone two turns, he's a different animal. I think he's right now my number one as far as the Derby top 5 is concerned. Number 2, let's take a look at Mohaymen's most recent start, that being the Fountain of Youth. Larry Combs to the call.
And Mohaymen have run 3/4 in 111 flat, and they're coming to the top of the stretch of the Fountain of Youth. Fellowship is trying to come and get them from third, and they're into the stretch, and it's Mohaymen who has taken the lead on the outside. Mohaymen to the front, pulling away from Zulu. Fellowship is third as Mohaymen pulls away, and Mohaymen remains unbeaten, winning the Fountain of Youth over Zulu.
Does it all the way you want to see a horse do it. And again, Larry Collins with the call, Pete Aiello with the call of the Rebel with the number 1 horse, Cupid. Mohaymen does everything the way you want to see a Derby contender do it. He's professional. He can rate. He can relax nice and easily. He's proven going 1 1/8 miles. He did that as a 2-year-old. Distance isn't going to be a problem for this horse. The concern I have is, and again, maybe I'm in the minority. I'm making way too much out of it because you just saw if you watched it on DRF Live or you're watching on YouTube or whatever it is, drf.com. This is a horse that 3 consecutive starts, going back to his final start as a 2-year-old. 95, 95, 95. You just saw Alvarado. He wasn't beating him up. He wasn't asking for everything. He didn't go to the bottom of the well. But at the same time, I need to see you run faster tomorrow afternoon, because if you don't, I don't know if I can take you seriously. And I'm a little bit, I'm intrigued and scared at the same time. That there's a part of me that hopes I was so wrong with one of the first shows that we did here, when I brought up those 2 back-to-back PPs of Mohaymen and Carpe Diem. Tomorrow we're going to find out. If he doesn't move forward from that 95, we may be looking at Carpe Diem again. Again, I'm not saying that we are. We'll find out tomorrow. I don't know if we are or not. But he's got to run faster if he's going to beat Nyquist, who's my number 3 horse on this list. Let's take a look at the stretch run of his San Vicente with Frank Miramati.
Just behind this trio, he's looking for racing room. El Charo feels the whip. Nyquist at the top of the stretch is the leader. Exaggerator puts a stern test to him, and Denman's Call is running on very nicely. But with 1/8 of a mile to go, Nyquist is still under a hand ride. Exaggerator keeps trying him, but he cannot go with Nyquist. And the champ is back in fine fashion. Nyquist takes the San Vicente.
This was a great performance for him. First start off the layoff, first start since the Breeders' Cup, 7 furlongs, and he ran fast finally. That was my biggest concern with him, that, you know what, Dick Girardi had wrote an article earlier on in the year kind of sort of writing that this horse, he's just not fast yet. And then Dick included. He said, you know what, finally this horse has run fast. He got the 101 buyer, and I'm on board with that as well. Now the question is, you got to run fast going 2 turns. And until he does that, it makes it almost sound like I'm saying it's setting up for someone other than those 2 to win. I'm not suggesting that. And I'm not even going to bury it anymore. I think Nyquist is going to win tomorrow. I think he's a faster horse right now. And yeah, he's going to have to overcome the ship, and he's going to have to overcome some of these other little things. He's run faster than Mohaymen has. He's proven going 2 turns at 1 16 miles. He can stretch out to 1 1/8 miles. I'm not too concerned. And he may get the jump on this horse on Mohaymen. So I'm going to go with Nyquist, but it'll be interesting to see tomorrow. Be fascinated, maybe not from a wagering standpoint, but I think it'll be a good race going forward toward the Derby. 4 and 5, let's first start off with More Spirit, the other Baffert runner. We're just going to take a look if you're watching live. We're going to run the replay over it with no audio. Again, thought his most recent start was very good. I think it's a scenario in which you can build off this. Bob Baffert seemed very pleased. Dancing Candy's out there on the front end. He set legitimate fractions, you know, give him the benefit of the doubt. He went on with it, but More Spirit had to do a little bit of running here. Exaggerator is second. He's going to start backing up. More Spirit finishes, and I don't think Stevens got to the bottom of him by any stretch of the imagination. He gallops out well. He's going to get pace to run at. Stevens, after this race, said he thought that this horse got more out of that one prep than all the other ones combined. I think More Spirit is still a very legitimate runner. At number 5 for me, we're not going to run the tape back, but you saw Cupid. He won the Rebel. Number 5 for me is Sudden Breaking News, and I kind of alluded to it when we talked about the DRF Plus headlines. Mary Rampolini talked about how this horse is getting ready for his final prep in the Arkansas Derby. He just got unlucky on the far turn. He got stopped. And again, you're going to be at the mercy of pace and trip whenever you have a one-run closer. I think from a talent standpoint, he is just as talented as any of these other horses. Maybe not quite as talented as the top 2 or 3. But I think he's a legitimate runner. I think you have to look at him if he does go to Kentucky as a major player. There is the updated top 5 for myself. Cupid is the new man on top. Mo Heyman and Nyquist 2 and 3. More Spirit, another Baffert runner in 4th. And Sudden Breaking News, we also got to keep in mind, he's got to get some points. He's only at 10 right now, so you're going to have to at least hit the board for him to get into the starting gate the first Saturday in May at Churchill Downs. Let's take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll take a look at last weekend's races that we handicapped, as well as 3 races for this upcoming weekend that we will all handicap. And they'll all be here on DRF Live tomorrow starting 3 Eastern. Stay with us, the Matt Bernier Show.
Saturday, April 2nd, Gulfstream Park. It's an East versus West battle for supremacy at the ExpressBet.com Florida Derby. The top 2 Triple Crown contenders, Heyman and Nyquist, face off at America's #1 thoroughbred track.
Mo Heyman to the front and remains unbeaten.
Nyquist in fine fashion takes the San Vicente.
Saturday, April 2nd, the ExpressBet.com Florida Derby. First race, 12 p.m. Welcome to your playground, Gulfstream Park.
Breeders' Cup Classic. Private Zone has run a 45 flat half mile and has opened up 2.5 lengths. Private Zone's got the lead close to home and he's all by himself. Private Zone wins the Forgo.
1242 East Coast, 942 West Coast, the Matt Bernier Show on DRF Live. Let's dive into some handicapping reviews and previews. Let's first take a look back at 2 races that we went over last weekend. Let's start with the big one, the $10 million Dubai World Cup out at Meydan. California Chrome going into it, thought he was the most likely winner. Kind of a 1A and 1B between California Chrome and Frosted. And then as far as a live long shot, which didn't end up being a long shot, and I kind of prefaced that it may not be, with Emshawish. Let's take it from the top of the stretch.
California Chrome out wide and loomed up. Mashorwish in the centre. Mumdahidge on the rail. They get away from Special Fighter. But California Chrome has gone into overdrive. He's 2 lengths in front. He's clear of Mumdahidge battling on. Then Mashorwish, but it's California Chrome in front. It's Alchemy in Dubai. Chrome turns to gold. California Chrome wins the Dubai World Cup from Mumdahidge and Opportunity.
Terry Spargo with the call. Look, this horse, there's nothing that you can knock about this horse. Some of the people, I will say though, the people on Twitter, and I have to just, I don't know who, but I mean, I saw multiple people right after the race say that horse would run with American Pharoah. No one would run with American Pharoah. We saw that last year. Even if California Chrome was healthy, and I shouldn't say no one, because I think Shared Belief would have given him at least a challenge. And we saw that Shared Belief humbled this horse, California Chrome. But at the end of the day, the landscape as is right now, California Chrome is the leader in the clubhouse. He's got over $12 million in earnings, something stupid like that. He's just worth his weight in gold at this point, and he just keeps adding. And TaylorMade, they did a very good job. They got involved early. They got this horse. He's going to go stand there at the end of the year. Sounds like we'll get 2 more races out of him, at least. P Classic, Breeders' Cup Classic. P Classic being at Del Mar this year, Breeders' Cup Classic back out at Santa Anita. As far as Frosted is concerned, I just don't think he fired his race. I think he'll come back, refresh, he'll be good to go. And Emshawish, he was up the track, but guess what? I just don't think he wanted to go that far. I thought he ran a very good race, and I think coming out of it, I know it's a quick turnaround. Normally we see a couple more months. I think the Met Mile for M. Shawish would be fantastic. You turn him back to a mile, one turn. I think that'd be right up that horse's alley for Todd Pletcher. The other race we took a look at, the Louisiana Derby. I thought the most likely winner was Motom, and I thought a live long shot was my son, Dazzling Gem. Let's take a look. John G. Dooley, top of the lane.
Gaining ground now toward the inside is Tom's Ready. They straighten past the quarter pole. 3/4 in 1 minute 12 and 4/5 seconds. Gunrunner has Forge in front of Candy My Boy. Tom's Ready. Motom toward the inside. Motom checked again. Motom in tight quarters at the fence. On the outside, Forever Mo and Dazzling Gem. Motom got stopped hard. It's Gunrunner. Gunrunner and Florent Giroux clear to the finish in the Louisiana Derby. Gunrunner wins going away. Tom's Ready was second. Bono for third.
If you backed Motom in that spot, wow, that's 2 in a row. That this horse was full of run down the lane and got absolutely stopped, ran up on heels. I thought he finished 4th. I thought he was the most likely winner. I think he was the best horse in the race. Gunrunner. Maybe I am being disrespectful to him, but the lead change thing bothers me. I don't think more distance is going to be his friend. His tactical speed's always going to make him dangerous, but I just don't think he's legitimate. As far as the live long shot is concerned, Dazzling Gem, my son, at first I was very down on it because I don't think very highly of that race as a whole. But at the same time, this is his first start in 6 weeks, first start off of an injury. And he ran in spots. He ran odd on the far turn. He was just kind of even. And then he finished like the 3rd or 4th fastest final 1/8 of a mile down the lane. I think he's just kind of a goofball figuring it out. He's a green. He's a young horse. He's figuring things out, but I like that he stayed professional. He bounced around a little bit. This is a horse you can build on. I'm terrified that Brad Cox has even floated the idea of the Pat Day Mile. I'm terrified because, that would kill me. But he's going to do right by the horse, and if he thinks that's what the horse needs to do and he won't be ready for a race like the Kentucky Derby, that's fine. His final prep, it sounds like they're torn right now. There's a couple different ways to go. You could go to the Arkansas Derby, you could go to the Lexington, you can go to the Northern Spur. There's plenty of options for this horse. It'll be interesting to see which path they choose for him going forward. Let's talk about some races coming up tomorrow. We'll have all 3 of these featured on DRF Live starting at 3 Eastern. Dan Elm and Mike Beer will start things off. We'll get about halfway through. Beer and I will swap places. Dan will stick around for the entire show. The Gulfstream Park Oaks it's not a star-studded race by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think it's an interesting betting race simply because I think there's a very vulnerable favorite in here. The 7 Off the Tracks, the outside runner, first-time Todd Pletcher. Johnny V takes them out. This is a horse by Curlin out of a dam, out of a Boston Harbor dam, I should say, called Havre de Grace. It's not that Havre de Grace. It's a different one. We would have known if this was the Havre de Grace because this filly would be taking all the headlines. But she's good. She's done nothing wrong. I think she's just a sprinter, though. I'm terrified of the distance. I don't think I want any part of her. She's 6-5 in the morning line. I think she should be 4-1. I don't think she's a slam dunk in this race by any stretch. I think she's a very vulnerable favorite, kind of a little bonus. I like 2 horses in here. I like the 2, Double Entendre, going to be making the first start against legitimate competition. First start off for a private purchase. And the 3, Go Maggie Go, for Dale Romans and Luis Saez. I think the 2 and the 3 are interesting at decent numbers. I think the 2 should be 8-1. I think the 3 should be 6-1. But a vulnerable favorite in the Gulfstream Oaks, the 7, Off the Tracks. Let's move on to the Honey Fox. Great day of racing in Gulfstream. It sounds like a broken record, but really, I know it's their biggest day. Fantastic races going on. 8 fillies and mares going to be going in the 1 mile. Honey Fox, it's a grade 2. I think the most likely winner is Sandiva, the 4-horse for Pletcher. Al Shakab Racing. They draw a line through the Royal Delta on dirt. She's a turf horse. She's 3 for 4 lifetime at Gulfstream, and she's 4 for 4 in the exacta. She's 0 for 8 at a mile. I find that a little bit intriguing. I think she's the most likely winner. I don't think she's a slam dunk, though. I think she should be 7-2 from a 9-5 morning line. Live long shot. I'm pairing these up because I fear that the 2 Celestine is going to take money because she's a bit of a reputation horse. I love her. I think she's got a ton of ability. A mile is what she wants. So she ran huge in that Sand Spring coming off the layoff. Second off the bench, she should be ready to move forward from Mott. I have her at 6-1 from an 8-1 morning line. But it's kind of a live long shot because if Celestine takes a ton of money, I think the outside runner, the 8 Elusive Collection, ran huge in that race as well for Josie Carroll. Johnny V stays aboard. On hold down the backside, turning for home, bottled up down the lane, didn't really have the opportunity to run and still finished well, galloped out strong. That race is better than it looks on paper. I think the 8 Elusive Collection is an interesting live long shot. So most likely winner, I think the 4 Sandiva, live long shots, the 2 Celestine, the 8 Elusive Collection. Let's move on to the 9th race at Turfway Park on their premiere, their signature day of racing for their meeting. We're going to go with the Bourbonette Oaks in this spot. I think the most likely winner tepidly is the 3 marquee miss. She's the best on paper. She's most accomplished. You don't have to worry about her catching a wet track because she clearly despises a wet track. She's run well other than that. Her win in the Martha Washington was good. Her win in the Dixie Belle was good. I think she's the most likely winner. But again, at a shortish number, I'm not going to be buying her wholeheartedly. I really thought the 7 Artesian, she's going to be my live long shot. I thought she was very, very good visually in that non-winners of 2 Lifetime at Keeneland last October that was washed off the turf. Been gone for a long time, and I have to assume that it's because she was stuck at Payson Park during the quarantine and the whole 9 yards. Sounds like everything's come out of it okay. She's going to go here. She's proven over the synthetic surface. She did that at Presque Isle when she broke her maiden going 6.5. I think Artesian's a nice little horse. I think she could be okay. From a buyer standpoint, she pales in comparison to this field. But again, I think she can take a big step forward. She's 10-1 in the morning line. The Bourbonette Oaks, most likely winner, the 3 marquee miss, live launch at the 7 Artesian. Take a deep breath. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Come back. We're going to be turning for home here on the Matt Bernier Show on Friday, April the 1st. We come back. We give you a weekend preview of everything that's to come on DRF Live as well as DRF Tournaments. Stay with us.
Say goodbye to your inner caveman. If you're making caveman bets on pick sixes, you could be leaving money on the table. DRF Bets Ticketmaker helps you build more profitable exotic bets and place them with one click. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticketmaker. Be a samurai with your ROI. DRF Bets Ticketmaker helps you cut out unprofitable exotic bets before they happen and be the master of profits. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticketmaker, the exotic wagering app.
Saturday, April 2nd, Gulfstream Park. It's an East versus West battle for supremacy at the ExpressBet.com Florida Derby. The top 2 Triple Crown contenders, Mahayman and Nyquist, face off at America's #1 thoroughbred track.
Mohayman to the front and remains unbeaten.
Nyquist in fine fashion takes the San Vicente.
Saturday, April 2nd, the ExpressBet.com Florida Derby. First race, 12 p.m. Welcome to your playground, Gulfstream Park.
12:52 East Coast, 9:52 West Coast. The Matt Bernier Show. We turn for home here on DRF Live. Let's take a look at DRF tournaments. What's to take a look at and what's to expect this weekend. If we can throw that slide up, we've got action on all 3 sites coming up. NHCQualified.com. Let's start there. Saturday, April the 2nd. $162 entry fee. Up to 4 packages will be awarded. 3 of them are guaranteed. NHC Tour points will be awarded to, I believe, the top 10% of finishers. 280 entries max, 1 for every 70 entries going forward. That's 1 NHC package for every 70 entries. BCQualify.com, Saturday and Sunday, April the 2nd and the 3rd. You got a $21 entry fee. The top 10% will advance to April 10th, round 2. Up to 4 packages awarded on April the 10th. And the $21 entry fee seems very low, so maybe you're going to want to take a look at that and make sure that that's actually what it is on BCQualify.com. Last I checked, that's what it was, so that's why we have it here on this graphic. DRFQualify.com, Saturday, April the 2nd, you have up to 2 Santa Anita Preakins Challenge packages will be awarded, as well as Sunday, April 3rd. $225 entry fee, again, up to 2 of them, 52 entries per contest. 1 Santa Anita Preakness Challenge package will be awarded for every 26 entries. Again, the Santa Anita Preakness package is a live money bankroll contest the weekend of the Preakness, but it's at Santa Anita Park. It's not at Pimlico. Again, Stronach Group, they're doing good stuff. They're putting all these great live money contests together. It's the Santa Anita Preakness Challenge. You're going to be playing for that on DRFQualify.com. You're going to be at Santa Anita. The Preakness is happening at Pimlico. It's Preakness weekend at Santa Anita Park. Let's take a look at the DRF Live rundown for tomorrow afternoon. Starting at 3 Eastern, again, Dan Illman, Mike Beard, they will kick things off at 3 o'clock. They'll bring you through the opening, beginning parts of these races, whether it is at Gulfstream Park or Turfway Park. Those are the only two, with the exception of the Grade 3 San Simeon from Santania that we're taking a look at. But heavy on Gulfstream, heavy on Turfway tomorrow. About midway point, I believe, right before the Honey Fox. I will swap in, Mike Beard will swap out, and Dan and I will bring you right through the Grade 1 Florida Derby. It's the highlight of the Gulfstream Park Championship meeting. Scheduled post time roughly 10 of 7 East Coast time. 12:54. Could take a quick break, a quick little breather, I should say. This is our sort of fun video of the week. This is an Olympic weightlifter. This is Maddie Rogers. She could break me in half like a twig, but as you can take a look at, we have audio of it as well, when things don't go well, you know, the weights can get away from you. Yeah, your front door is just absolutely destroyed. Can we watch it one more time? Her reaction's priceless. Just the hands go up knowing that. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to run in front of the weights? Look, I'm not an Olympic weightlifter like that, but I can only imagine. At what point do you think went through her head and she said, something I can't say right now, but she realized this isn't going up, and when it goes down, there goes your front door. But apparently she tweeted out the other day or put it on Instagram that it's all good. They've replaced the front window. It's all taken care of. No more shattered glass. There was another video of her sweeping up the glass. It was very funny. So that's our fun little video of the week. Got about 5 minutes. We're going to cut out of here in about 2, but again, tomorrow, DRF Live, 3 Eastern. That's the big final sort of weekend of racing at Gulfstream Park as far as the championship meeting is concerned. It all culminates in the showdown, and I can't remember the last time there was a showdown this early in the year between the 2 Derby favorites, 2 of the 3 Derby favorites. You're going to have the undefeated Mo Heyman. You've got the undefeated Nyquist. They'll be going toe-to-toe in the Grade 1 Florida Derby. I want to thank everyone for paying attention here on DRF Live. If you watch the podcast on YouTube, drf.com, or you listen to it on SoundCloud, thank you as well. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, fire away at me on Twitter right there at the bottom, at Bernier_Matt. I'm more than willing to listen and try to take it all into consideration. Thank you, Mike Claudio, Christina Wilson in the other room. Let's throw it to the DRF Formulator Race of the Day for Friday that Illman and I did earlier this week. Take care. Best of luck this weekend. We'll check back in with you next Friday on the Matt Bernier Show.